Hello, hello, loves. I want you to listen to this little interview with Jane Elliott.
And that is not something about White Privilege was a paper written by a woman named Peggy McIntosh. She was brilliant, no doubt about it. And in her white privilege paper, it says these are the kinds of things that she lists in her white privilege paper. Just a minute, I'm sure I have it here. I hope I have it
So,
handy.
this is about white privilege. Okay, guys?
She has a whole list of white privilege and male privilege. And this is one of them. I can turn on the television or open to the front page of the paper and see people of my race widely represented.
List of privileges.
I can be sure that my children will be given curriculum materials that testify to the existence of their race. I can be pretty sure of having my voice heard in a group of which I am the only member of my race. And she uses that word in practically every one of those 24. Now, evidently, she didn't know in 1987 when she got this published, that there's only one race of people on the face of the earth. Now, if she has all those rights and what she calls privileges because of her race, then if race is the reason she has them, we should all have the same rights and privileges, right?
Exactly.
Yes. Well, we don't, because of the ignorance of people who think that there's more than one race.
Yep.
Instead of calling this white privilege, she should have called it unfair advantage based on the ignorance about race.
Exactly.
Because that's what it is. It's these what we call white privileges. In the first place, white people don't exist. It's a lie. In the second place, there's only one race, and if pale faces have all these privileges because of their race, then everybody has all these privileges because we're all members of the same race. Now, I understand what she was trying to teach, but she used the wrong language. The whole paper is based on a faulty premise. And wherever I go, somebody says to me, well, I have white privilege. And I say, well, that's bullshit. Now, don't put that in your remarks, but as is Barnard. We don't have these privileges because we are white. We have these privileges because we have managed to indoctrinate people to the myth of the rightness of whiteness. And that is not something about which to be proud or for which to be grateful.
Yep.
It has kept us from learning about those who are of a different color because we're quite certain that they are of a different race. They aren't. They're a different color group, but they are not different races.
It lets us be more ignorant because we think, oh, well, races are real, they exist, therefore I don't have to learn anything and do better because this is how the world is always gonna work. It's like races are not brought to you by God or by whatever higher power. Like, this is not even meant to be in a human society ever.
I resent that paper. And I understand that it was meant to enlighten us. But it doesn't enlighten us when it teaches us to maintain our ignorance.
It does not enlighten us because it teaches us to maintain our ignorance, because race doesn't exist. There is not more than like one race. There's only the human race. And the reason that this is so important is because, again, when you think in races, you start thinking, okay, well, we're just different, and oh, all white people are the only ones who can ever be privileged. But this is a social construct, a belief that keeps being forced onto us, where we keep saying race is real, race is real, race is real, when we should also look at the fact that it's never been real. And that is also a better way at tackling racism.
Every white person in this room wants to spend the rest of his or her life being treated the way we treat our black citizens. Please stand. Nobody stands. Several years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I was doing a program and I said to the group, well, every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the black race stand. Now the white race, now the red race, now the yellow race, now we got them all up. I said, now, well, every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the human race, please sit down. They all sat down. And a woman stood up, an older, not older, she's about 45 years old, and she said, well, I'm afraid that when they get power, I said, they. She said, yes, when those people get power, they're going to want to do to us what we've done to them. I said, that's your major fear, isn't it? you're afraid that if they get on top, you're going to suffer. She said, yes, I am. I said, you think they want to get even with you? Yes, I do. I said, okay, let's find out. Well, every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the black race and who wants to get even with all white folks, please stand. 3 young black males stood. The rest of them, there were 1,500 people in this room, and half of them were black. And the rest of those people of color just turned and looked at him like, are you stupid? And I said, there, you see, they don't want to get even with all of us. She said, okay. I said, do you feel better now? She said, I think I do. I said, good, now let's be honest about it. You feel better because they don't want to get even with all of us, right? Yes. I said, now, well, every black person in this room who wants to get even with 1 or 2 white people, please stand. They all leaped to their feet, cheering and laughing and high-fiving one another, and just tickled to death. And I said, do you feel better now? She said, well, no, I don't. I said, here's the solution.
Yep.
Make sure that your behavior is such that you aren't one of the 1 or 2 they want to get even with. Does that make sense to you? She said, I think so. And I said to the group, does that make sense to you? And immediately they're all cheering and laughing and high-fiving one another again. So if we would treat people fairly, we wouldn't be the ones they want to get even with. I doubt that many people of color want to get even with me, but I know that a whole lot of palefaces really want to get even with me. And they can't do it because, number one, I'm so old that if they kill me, I don't care. My husband is gone. My oldest son is gone. I would like to be where they are. And the ones that are left will remember me, not a doubt about that. But when I'm on a college campus and there are those 3 little boys wearing that red cap that says Make America Hate Again, it says great again, but it means hate again.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, while I'm talking, they're doing this. And I finally stop and I say, look, fellas, I know what you're thinking about, and I know what you're talking about. So you're going to see me dead because of what I do to attempt to lessen the degree of racism in this country. I know that. And you can kill me. That doesn't matter. I'll go someplace better than this. Make no mistake about this. However, you need to know that if you kill me because of what I'm doing, you might make a martyr out of me, and then you might have to spend the rest of your lives celebrating Jane Elliott Day once a year. Now, do you want to do that? And they'll go, no. I say, fine, then shut up and listen while I'm talking. And they shut up and listen. However, they've done themselves a real disservice, because at that point, all the young men of color have nailed them. They see who they are. They have been identified. They know who they are, and you can see those young men of color talking and looking at one another and pointing at those 3 guys. And I think, fellas, you just made a really big mistake. If you're going to be a racist, do it quietly. Don't do it in a great big auditorium with a really disgusted old white woman up there who doesn't have to take it and who has no fear. I gave up fear the night, the morning. I had to open a motel room door and look out and see all these windows looking down on that court and realize that behind one of those windows might be the person who was sent there to shoot me.
Wow.
And I was terrified. So I backed up, and I closed the door, and I remembered as if it happened yesterday. I thought, now, Jane, you've got a decision to make. You can stay here and be paralyzed with fear and never do this job again, or you can walk out of here and figure you don't have anything to fear.
Because this is horrible
and
and nobody's going to keep taking living like this.
I took my luggage cart in my hand, I put my purse over my shoulder, and I stepped in my shoulders because I thought if my muscles were stiff enough, the bullets would bounce off maybe. You do strange things when you're scared. And I walked quickly. I didn't run because I don't think you're afraid. I think you run because you're afraid because you run. I think the adrenaline starts to run and you have to run in response to that. So I walked quickly to the desk to sign out, and when I got there I thought, well, you damned on me. Look what you just did. You just allowed them to scare you nearly to death. This will never happen again, and it has never happened since. And I've had some really ugly close encounters of the most disgusting kind. But I will not be frightened away, and I will not be talked out of the truth. It says somewhere, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. When we find out the truth about race in this country, we can go ahead and be the nation that we were supposed to be.
Yeah, she had some points. Of course, I don't care about being in a nation and a part of that, because I just feel like, I think people need to just go back to being in small groups and living a bit more separated lives. Like, yeah, we'll talk to each other sometimes, but we still have our own communities. And one big nation of like, what, even 1 billion people, even like 15,000, 20,000, 50,000. Like, that's too much. But she had a lot of good points in this one. And yeah, I never really thought about it like that. You know, like people do retaliate, and it's not all white people, but yeah, it's some people who can be identified as white, aka having like European ancestry. But she also says how race is a social construct. You know, there's only one race, the human race. And still, she does use terms like black and white, but she still don't forget that these all are things that do not really exist. And the problem is when people use racism, like races exist first and then racism happens. That's the problem, because no, you cannot have a race without racism. Because again, we are one race, the human race. So that's hopefully what I want to communicate. Like, it's not good to say your race is the cause of racism. That's why white privilege can't really exist. Because people are white and they are privileged because they are white. Like, it's not possible. It's more accurate to say, again, we have people in our society who decided people of European ancestry are going to rise to this top, and then these people have to act like this, look like this, XYZ. And there was a man who created just saying, oh yeah, this race is the most beautiful of all races, and I've discovered there are all these different races of people, and some reason, like, they took it, they ran with it, based on, of course, keeping up classism, keeping up more inequalities, keeping up confusion, dividing people to conquer them, you know, all of that. Divide and conquer is very, very common, and that's why we have white people without rights. Whereas if you look at Europe and England and France, you know, the European countries, people could say, hey, they have more rights. But again, that's only on paper, because they are still suffering. Like, they still have poverty, they still have starvation, they still can't find jobs. Like, but point is, in comparison to America, people say, oh, they're doing better. But really, it's just because they didn't have the same racism to distract them like America did. And America knew how to use it. But of course, they have their racism now to divide people. So, anyway, guys, bye.